What could your pipeline look like if you merged sales, skills, and acumen with artificial intelligence? On today's episode with Holly Allen, the founding Fullenrich, we find out Holly really has an incredible stack in her go-to-market approach at Fullenrich. On this episode, she literally reveals her playbook as to how she's able to close sizable enterprise-level deals with businesses. She talks about her fears 12 months ago and how she overcame them. Holly is relentless. She turns around cold calls pretty much every day. She does it live on LinkedIn as well. So she's got some balls of steel. If you want to look at how this lady turns around and pushes her business relentlessly, how she added £60,000 in annual recurring revenue into her business in the last quarter, then tune into this podcast because this was a great one. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, please share it with a friend. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Jay Story, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Holly, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Holly, I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Your favourite question, Joe. Growth to me looks like the thing that scared you a year ago, that thing becoming something that you do absentmindedly on a random Tuesday. I think for me, growth is all about doing things that once terrified me, made me feel uncomfortable, being able to do them now, feel really comfortable and confident with doing them. I think that way the scary stuff becomes your baseline, and then something new starts to terrify you, and then you keep growing and evolving from there.
Interesting answer. What scared you a year ago?
What scared me a year ago? Probably having a demo call with someone with a very senior title. I've worked across multiple different sales orgs, and I've sold to an array of different personas, from VPs of marketing, CFOs, HR leaders. Most recently in my current role at Fullenrich, it's VPs of sales, CROs. And I remember when I was at Deal selling to CFOs, that was a job title that particularly terrified me at the time. I would get so overwhelmed before a call. I'd be like, if I was working from home, pacing my flat, getting so into my head about, they're going to ask me questions I'm not going to be able to answer. I can't do this. I'm not good at this. And now, when I'm having conversations with some of the best sales leaders in the world, talking about data and getting into the intricacies of how data works, why good data is so important, I can confidently go on those calls and know that I know my stuff. And just because they're a big senior job title and they've been around a lot longer than I have, it shouldn't terrify me or make me feel like I can't do my job.
I think there's a ton of people that can resonate with your sentiment. I definitely know that I resonate with what you said there. So just kind of walk me through, what did the process look like over the last year to overcome this thing that scared you?
I think it's all about time, experience, and doing the reps. I talk a lot about cold calling on LinkedIn as a great way of booking meetings, lead gen, and I think cold calling is such a hot topic at the moment. Everyone's terrified of doing it, right? No one wants to pick up the phone and cold call a stranger that they've never spoken to before. But the fact is, the more that you put it off and you resist it, you're never going to get any better at it. You know, it is a case of just doing, putting in the reps, making the mistakes, learning quickly from those, so that the next cold call that you make, you're going to be better, it's going to feel less terrifying. And I think that's really the place I've got to now. You know, don't get me wrong, I still get nervous before demos. I still really care about them, and I want to make sure that, you know, I do my absolute best. And there are some kind of more complex deals or job titles that maybe make me feel a bit nervous. But I think that, you know, now is because I really care and I'm very passionate about my job and what I do, as opposed to thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. So I think putting in the reps, and learning from your mistakes.
And in your opinion, what do you think it is about cold calling that makes it so nerve-wracking to people? In a very long previous world, this was 2018, 19, I worked in Forex sales, cold calling, and it was weird because I saw that as my job. I really didn't care. I would just call people and there'd be nothing to it. My brother, he works in sales, just got a really good new job, cold calling. He loves it. He says he does it for the love of the game. But what do you think it is? And also, why do you think people find it so nerve-wracking? And do you think it's either something people obsessively love or they just can never get around to it?
So firstly, you say that your brother loves cold calling. I don't think anyone can love cold calling. That is insane to me. However, I think that the results that you get from cold calling are what people love because, I will kind of shout about this for as long as I'm in sales. I do believe that cold calling is the quickest way to book a meeting or to get a yes or a no. I think the reason why it's so terrifying and there's so much fear around it is because it is a very unnatural thing to do, and you are literally opening yourself up for so much rejection to that person on the other end of the phone. It's not a kind of normal thing to do to pick up the phone, call a complete stranger, go in with your permission-based opener, and then, they could say anything to you from that point, whether it's where did you get my number, whether it's telling you to go away, never call them again.
You can swear on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually. You just don't know what's going to happen from there. So I think it's the fear of the unknown. But like I say, the more that you practice it, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, as cliche as that sounds, suddenly then you're like, do you know what? What's the worst that can happen? If they tell me to go away, is it life or death? No, it's not. And if, on the 10th call, I actually have a great conversation and book a meeting, that's what I'm going to go to bed remembering that night, not all the people that told me where to stick it.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting because it's very comparable to dating. And I don't remember the exact quote by Alex Hormozy. It's essentially you're playing a game which you're looking to just strike out once. You're looking to get pretty much one home run. So everything else that has come before it really isn't irrelevant. And when I look at our pipeline of prospects we contacted 5 years ago, no one remembers who we are, nor do we even really remember who they are, being very honest. But it's one of those things that you only remember the things that actually work out, and people don't remember your name. They don't remember so many the minute details that you spoke to them about. So just kind of looping that question back in, do you think cold callers are born or made?
Made. Definitely. I think it's like going to the gym for the first time. When you walk into the gym, you're probably not going to know which equipment you need to be picking up, how many reps you need to be doing, what you need to be doing to ultimately get the finished product, which, I don't know, is your dream beach body or whatever that may be, or getting stronger. But I think the more that you put the work in, I think that's how you are made to do it.
I agree. I think there's an element of people have natural talent, but equally at the same time, I really agree with the sentiment of people being made. A couple of years ago, I hired 2 BDRs into my team. One, he was just all the credentials, went to a really good Russell Group university, won't name names, and he was there. He started really, really well. And then another guy who I brought into my team, who has now become one of my best friends, his name's Conrad, just give him a quick shout out. He came in, he moved over from Lithuania in I think 2018, 2019. He wouldn't even mind me saying this. His English was pretty shit. But what he was willing to do was outwork the other guy. And always what he's been willing to do is just, if the requirement is to put 10 reps in, he won't even do 12, he'll do 15. He'll do the extra hours, he'll work on weekends. And I really believe, I run a startup. And for me, when I look at hiring people, bringing in talent, I would rather have the person with unbelievable work ethic who is willing to learn than the person who thinks they have all of this God-given talent but isn't willing to actually put the work in, or thinks that they've got the 80% in there but isn't willing to learn the 20%. I know that you place a lot of talent. What are the key qualities that you look for when you're looking for talent to put into companies?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, we've just hired our first ADRs similar to an SDR role here at Fullenrich. And they're going to be on my team, so I was involved in that process. And I think
Just to clarify for the listeners, what is an ADR?
Account development representative. So a junior salesperson that will come in, they will identify new sales opportunities, as well as building on existing deals, accounts, looking for expansion opportunities. And I think the number one thing that I look for is someone that is like a dog with a bone, someone that is relentless. To your point, they have the work ethic. We've now hired someone that'll work here with me in Manchester, and the thing that I loved about him was from my very first conversation with him, he messaged me every single day on WhatsApp, not asking for an update, not like being annoying, but being consistent in the right way, saying things like, oh, I've just seen that this company is hiring 15 SDRs. I think that this would be a really great account to go after, just as an FYI, kind of subtle messages here and there that kept him front of mind and made me think, God, he would be a really good salesperson. Like, he is not giving up. So I think being relentless, being consistent is super important. I also think, though, when we talk about having a really great work ethic, I think it's about how you're using your time, and you're not just kind of spending loads of hours doing stuff that isn't going to work and isn't going to generate good outcomes. What I mean by that is something that was really important for us in the interview process was, okay, how would you, here's your approach. What are you going to automate, and what are you going to keep human with that approach? And how are you going to use, we're very heavy Claude users at Fullenrich. How are you going to use Claude to automate what you can, but keep the kind of very human sales element? So rather than, someone spending 7 hours building contact lists, finding prospects, that's the stuff that ideally we need them to be knowing how to automate and being able to cleverly kind of power that in the background. And then their work ethic, the time that they're actually, spending, is on having real conversations, speaking live with customers, potential prospects, etc.
I love that. So that's a good little shout out to him there. So just looking at that, kind of lifting the hood on what you mentioned there, and you spoke about your new team member, he's come in, he was relentless, messaging you on WhatsApp every single day. I found that some of our best opportunities and deals have come from doing the exact same, doing the unscalable. In a world where everyone's looking for, need these automated sequences, it's just following up in many creative ways. WhatsApp messages, coming with values. Hey, wrote so-and-so article, thought of you. One thing that I've seen to work really effectively is, and I understand in recruitment, you can't do it as much. You want to kind of keep your clients close to your chest, but it's shouting out the brand in a post. That has probably been one of the strongest tactics I've personally used in signing business, because publicly putting a spotlight on a business and saying, hey, this is what we could do for you, works really well for us. And I think it kind of forces the prospect to say, yep, okay, I see you, because it's kind of an indirect benefit to them. Let's just take your new team member. Let's just call him James, for instance. So James is there. In what he did, what was it that stood out to you, and how do you toe the line between not coming across as annoying and a bit of a beg and actually providing value? And for you, I imagine there was loads of messages there where you probably didn't respond because you're just too busy and it's not front of mind. So what was it about what he did there, and what advice could you give to people who are in sales, business development, in order to not come across as too forceful?
Yeah, and I think there definitely is a fine line between being relentless and just being a little bit annoying. That said, I do think to be successful in sales, especially as an SDR whose job is to book meetings, primarily, I think you do have to be a bit annoying. You do have to be, oh my God, another WhatsApp message. But I think it's about the context of that message. Like I say, he was dropping little nuggets to me, not just asking for an update, where are we in the process, but he was dropping stuff to me that was actually valuable. For example, hey, I've just seen this account that, maybe these guys could really benefit from Fullenrich and better contact data. Here's why. He was showing that he knew what we do as a company really, really well. He's essentially already acting as though he's in the role because he's doing his job. Like, he's identifying new opportunities. So kind of short, sweet messages, remaining like really positive as well throughout the whole process, like super excited to get started, almost being a bit kind of presumptuous before we'd even given him the offer about, can't wait to be working with you guys, can't wait to be identifying new accounts. Like, to me, that's someone that's being really proactive. He's a go-getter. He understands what we do because he's literally sending me prospects that I want to go and speak to right now. And yeah, just having a kind of great energy and being persistent in the right way versus, hey, any update? Hey, I've not heard anything back. So yeah, following up with value, I think, is the kind of takeaway there.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same A advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplifier. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. I think that's such a valuable lesson for people because you hear it all the time. Someone's waiting for a job and it's the classic, you're trying to chase business or looking for a job and haven't heard from them for a week, 2 weeks. And I think what people forget is quite often our biggest priority isn't the biggest priority of someone else. And most businesses, most companies have so many decisions and they probably follow the Eisenhower matrix of do, don't, urgent, not urgent, and they work off it. From then, quite often candidates, they're not as urgent as candidates think they are, or in business, the proposition you have, there's a timing issue, or there's a cost issue, or there's just an information issue that I think with what you're talking about there, which I think is really insightful, is just looking at that. How do you follow up with value? And even for us, we were chasing a deal with a £40 million company here in the UK. They were on the Financial Times 100 fastest growing list 2025, really good conversations, and the deal went dead. And I just continuously followed up until I got a no, and that's okay. I'd rather no than be in the lurch and thinking, what's happening there? And we're working on a pretty creative angle to get back in with them there, which is there. But I think the thing that I've looked at is always do the unconventional and be willing to put the odds in that most aren't. My question to you is, that's all well and good for a candidate who's chasing a one-of-one job. How do you do that at scale?
It's a very good question and something I would say I'm still trying to figure out. And I think it's all about being really strict with your time and qualifying in and qualifying out so quickly. If we rewind, we go back to 12 months ago, or let's say 15 months ago when I just joined Fullenrich, I was having a conversation with anyone and everyone who may have been interested in contact data, because I just wanted to, number one, practice, get really good at my pitch, but number two, I had happy ears as soon as someone talked about contact data. What that meant was I had, 30, 40, 50 demos a week, and my conversion was super low on those because these were, maybe didn't quite fit our ICP, maybe were like really small businesses, maybe the time wasn't quite right. Ultimately, I hadn't qualified properly, and then I just spent a lot of time with people that were never going to buy. I think, also thinking about 15 months ago, we didn't have access to tools like Claude or ChatGPT that I had initially started using. So now, being able to qualify opportunities, qualify accounts without even having to speak to them first is a big part of the work that I do on Claude. So At Fullenrich, we're really lucky. We get tons of signups every single month, people that want to trial out our platform. Rather than sifting through those manually, calling every single person, hey, I see that you've signed up, are you interested, getting kind of wishy-washy response, I'm using Claude to essentially go through all of those signups for me and then flag the 10 that Claude believes will be a good fit. And I've programmed that by, okay, do we work with any of their competitors? Do they have a sales team of over 15 reps? Have they recently received funding? All those kind of triggers that to me imply, the signals that would imply this could be a good fit. So now, rather than spending, 3 hours going through all of those signups, I'm focused on the ones that are more likely to be a good fit. And then I think that's where the real human element comes in. So I've used AI to be more efficient in the kind of back end and the admin side of things. But then I can really give my time and focus on those 10 accounts that could be a good fit. For example, I had an account last month where a rep had signed up, looked like it could be a good account, had a call with the rep. They pointed me towards the commercial director. Had a conversation with him and he was like very quick to shut me off. He was like, we're already, at negotiation with Cognizant. I like their data, it's good-ish, and like, we're going to sign. You're too late to have this conversation. I'd also figured out that he had an office in Manchester, and I happened to just say to him, out of interest, when are you next in Manchester? Long story short, we got a data test running in the background. He was coming to Manchester the next day. I took him for lunch the next day. We built a great relationship. And we won on the data side, so that was obviously great. Pricing, we were near enough the same as what Cognizant was offering. But what he told me on the lunch was, Holly, even if the data didn't come out on top, I would still want to go with you. Why? Because I feel like you've actually taken the time to understand our business, to understand me. We're here today. We were talking about holidays. He was telling me about his newborn baby. And that's number one, the stuff that you can't get with AI. But number two, I think that is where a lot of reps are missing today. They think that just because Claude has told you, oh, they posted about this 6 months ago on LinkedIn, reference their golf trip, like that isn't personalization, and that isn't making a prospect feel special and like you really care about them. And I think that we should be spending more time on things like lunches, in-person meets, things that the prospect really cares about, because now we have more time to do it because we've got AI tools to automate all of the other boring stuff that used to take hours on end.
I love it. Honestly, I think the big summary that I've taken away from what you've said, and this is what we're really engineering when we go into businesses, is use AI. And we had a big dev team meeting yesterday talking about Claude skills, and essentially we come up with ideas. What can we automate within our business to essentially supercharge what we're doing? So daily reports, insights on businesses, what's going on in the market, these types of snippets that typically would have required, I don't know, an hour worth of research. And it's always one of those things, it's an hour worth of research and then you're dipping into other things because the concentration isn't there because you don't enjoy it too much. But then you've got the tools, you've got the systems that learn better, that they give you better outcomes and insights than you could have generated before, to really focus on the unscalable, the highest leverage opportunities within business right now. On that point, what does your and please talk a little bit about Fullenrich, but your Claude stack right now, have you built out Claude skills that essentially they go into your data sample of, we have, I don't know, 50 clients on our books here, let's look at these competitors, then it spits you out a daily report that says, these are the top opportunities that we think you should go for, this is why, this is what you can follow up with. How complex does your AI stack look on that side of things?
Yeah, so we've got Claude skills built out. My favorite thing on Claude, so we use Cowork, is the scheduled tasks. What I get that to do is I get it to go into my LinkedIn every single day and check, okay, which sales leaders, CROs, people that I would want to speak to have viewed my profile or requested to connect with me in the last 24 hours. So that I can really easily filter through and see, okay, these people, maybe they just viewed my profile, maybe they're interested in data, and that's what led them onto my profile. So rather than me having to kind of manually go through, it's looking at that. I love social selling. I, have a fairly big presence on LinkedIn, so that is an absolute gold mine for me. And again, something that would be very manual, would take up a lot of time previously, having to kind of go through, check. Claude is already telling me, like, you need to go and speak to this person. They checked out your profile. Take it one step further, it's writing the LinkedIn message that I can send to them, right? So that's one piece, as well as, reading our CRM. Here are the closed won deals for this week. Here are accounts based on your ICP, based on what we know is a good fit that you should be going after and think about reaching out to next week. So that's how we have it set up. And then on the Fullenrich side, so our product is MCP ready. For those that don't know, Fullenrich is contact data, mobile numbers, email addresses that actually connect to your prospect, as well as a search engine built into our tool that can help you identify contacts based on your ICP. So let's say Claude tells me, okay, you've closed XYZ companies this month. You should go after these 3 companies next month. I can then use the Fullenrich MCP to say, okay, find me the VPs of sales, CROs, the best people to speak to about Fullenrich at these companies, give me their phone numbers, email addresses. That then feeds directly into the CRM, and then come Monday morning, I've got a clean call list that I can literally go through and start calling. So again, that manual time of having to close one account, then go on to G2, who are their competitors? Okay, now let me go onto LinkedIn. Now let me find manually all of the VPs of sales at these companies. Now let me go to my enrichment tool and enrich them with phone and email data. Like, all of that is taken away now. So, I'm not saying I'm a Claude expert. I'm sure that there's loads more that, I could be doing with AI, but certainly as an organization, we are very, like I say, Claude heavy users. We love it. We've got a head of AI that lives and breathes Claude and is giving us updates all the time and how we can, use it more efficiently. And I definitely feel the benefits as someone that's kind of on the front line trying to generate as much revenue as possible.
Amazing. I love it. And I think if I'm honestly speaking, we've spoken to a lot of people on here with regards to AI, and most people don't have a Scooby-Doo what to do. They're just lost. They're not too sure. And I think a lot of it, when we go in to consult with businesses, is just to really break down, decompartmentalize what is going to give them the most leverage. Even yesterday on our team call, when we were talking about what to implement and what not to implement, I think the first thought in a founder or the head of a department should always be, what is the highest impact, highest leverage opportunity that we need to look for within our business to automate and look at AI driving, essentially using the brain there to work with everything there. For you guys at Fullenrich, what was the moment for you where you wanted to become essentially, and maybe I've got this wrong, but an AI native business? When did you make that pivot? What did you see within the market say, we need to move into this direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I think back to 3-4 months ago, I remember seeing all these posts on LinkedIn about Claude, and people were, I don't know if you saw it, people were sharing screenshots of their calendars, and it was just back-to-back meetings, and it was like, this is what your diary can look like if you have Claude. So I think there was already so much noise around it, and it was kind of like, you can't really ignore this, we've got to jump on this. But I think that the main piece for us is we want to help sales reps become as efficient as they possibly can. And I think that really is the kind of key, a kind of key theme in the market at the moment across so many go-to-market teams. It's like, how can we make our reps super, super efficient and have them having more conversations? And something that we saw is, so we are a platform-based product, so you can come into our platform, you can manually enrich contacts. Like I say, we have a search engine where you can build lists based on your ICP. And that's all great, but it does take time. And what's so much more efficient, that might take 10 minutes, is to come into something like a Claude, use natural language to be able to build your list and have it in, under a minute, 100 contacts that you can then call through. And so we realized, okay, we need to be MCP ready to enable sales teams to essentially act in this way. And I think as well, something that always comes up in conversations is integrations. We've got this huge tech stack. We've got all these different tools. We need to make sure that they can all talk to each other. And that's just near impossible, having seamless integrations from tool to tool. And I think that something like a Claude, businesses, tools having an MCP just enables that to happen. It just makes it so much less kind of painful than having to sit and think about building a custom integration or, whatever that may look like.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplifier. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. Yeah, 100%. I think I'd say the biggest growth I saw in AI was Q1 of this year, of how the disparity between, if we just take Anthropic, Claude, for instance, against OpenAI, ChatGPT, they were quite neck and neck. For an instance, ChatGPT was the market leader, and then Claude just went into its own stratosphere. Now ChatGPT is thinking, actually, we need to catch up, and they're widening their scope. I think for image creation, just standard generative AI images, videos, ChatGPT, not really videos, but it works better than Claude. Claude is expanding into its own realm of, I'd say, capabilities and working capabilities of what it's doing. And I know the exact post you're talking about. It's, I replaced my whole GTM team with Claude in 30 minutes. Here is how to do it. And most of these things don't work. They try to use Fable, and they make skills that aren't really all that. I've downloaded a lot. We've tested a lot. They're there. And I think if something's so good, why would you give away your intellectual property for free? That's kind of my hesitation with a lot of what people are saying here. But with that, I think what you really asserted into the market is the friction. I know for me, if a tool is too complex or can't connect with what I'm doing, and I need several different tools to communicate with each other, I'm not interested in it. I don't want any more complexity in my business than what I already have. If anything, I just want simplicity, where I have one interface that can talk to Go High Level, that can talk to Slack, that can talk to Google Drive, and pull everything in together in one place. I don't know, put in an Airtable or Notion doc, and then just works from there. So I love what you're talking about there. For you, where do you see your market going in the next 12 months with AI? How much displacement are you looking at? What's your kind of sentiment with how you see the market going? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here. None of us are AI experts, but what are you seeing? What are the kind of common triggers you're listening to with your ear to the ground?
Yeah, so I think that, again, on LinkedIn, you'll see so many posts that say AI is going to take all of our jobs, it's going to replace salespeople. I think there's definitely still going to be a need for salespeople. I think AI is more likely to replace salespeople that don't use AI or don't use it in the right way. But I think there is absolutely still going to be a need for salespeople, customer success, account teams, etc. The reason I think that is because I think AI is going to be used even more heavily than it is now on, like I say, automating all of the stuff that salespeople spend so much time doing, the kind of admin side. I think of AI as like your best intern. The tool or the hire where you come in every day and you've got your to-do list ready to go, you've got your priorities, but ultimately you need to be the person to execute on that. And I think particularly in sales is about relationships. Sales is about trust. If you're on a call and someone gives you a pricing objection, you can go in and put that objection into Claude and it can tell you the different ways to handle it. What Claude can't do is actually be there on the call with you and read that person's body language, read that person's facial expression, read in between the lines and figure out, okay, you've told me pricing is the objection, but we all know that there's actually another objection behind that. Like, that's not the final objection. What is the real reason that this can't get over the line? So I don't think AI is going to take salespeople's jobs. Like I say, I think salespeople are definitely under pressure in terms of how we use AI to be as efficient as possible. But with that, as I kind of mentioned earlier in the conversation, I think there is going to be more expectation to go above and beyond for the kind of human elements that AI can't do. Because like I say, you're now saving, 10 hours plus a week on all the boring admin stuff that used to take up loads of time. Now it's about, okay, you've got that 10 hours. What can you do that AI can't that's going to be super valuable and going to help you generate revenue? Whether that is making X more dials per week and booking in more meetings, or that is going to visit clients in person, going for the lunches, doing the in-person meetings, events, whatever that may be. So yeah, I think there's going to be more expectation on that for sure.
Mm-hmm. My view is that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, but what's going to happen is AI isn't going out there to intentionally replace jobs. It's the people who are orchestrating the systems. I wrote an article a few months ago on LinkedIn, and kind of a bit of a summary was the people who are using AI are the ones who are going to replace the people who aren't using AI effectively. It's there to do, as you mentioned, the repeatable, the repetitive, the boring tasks. And if people focus their attention into low value tasks, then yeah, they're the ones who are going to be replaced. And there's a big reason why you're seeing so many corporate entities, banks, financial services, insurance companies, they're replacing the people who are just doing the very boring, repetitive tasks. However, I think in the business development and sales landscape, if you're intentionally focusing your energy into, as you mentioned, and I think there's such a good playbook that you've mentioned here as to what you're doing, the elements that are unscalable, non-verbal body language, analyzing for that. Yeah, Claude, like one of the biggest elements that these agentic AI systems, these LLMs are focusing on is emotional intelligence. But fundamentally, these systems don't actually know what it's like to actually feel, taste, see, touch. Therefore, they're based off of all of the information out there on the web that's being essentially pieced together based off of what's there, and it's making up assumptions because it actually doesn't know what sex is like. It's just taking together everything that people have put out online and said, this is what it's like. So I think for a salesperson, if they're focused on just cutting corners and doing the easiest tasks, they're the ones who are going to be rudely interrupted in what they're doing. And I've even seen it, what we've done, graphic designers, editors, stuff like that. You can go to Claude with the right prompt or even ChatGPT and get far better work than the average person is doing. So I think the lazy people, the people who aren't really thinking about where the real value is added, maybe strategy, maybe things that you want to get a human perspective from, that's where humans can really shine and take a liking to.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think it's a kind of funny shift, right? Because I think when COVID happened, we saw everyone suddenly working from home, and everyone thought that Gen Z was lazy, and it felt like if something like AI came in as strongly as it has, then everyone would just become lazy and AI would do everything. And I think now we're almost shifting the other way, where it's like, no, you actually have to get out there and, to your point, do the stuff that AI can't, interact with people in person, understand and read their body language, build genuine relationships and real connections that, you haven't put in a prompt that says, oh, they just said this, what can I say that sounds genuine. So yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting shift for sure.
I think, I don't remember the exact scientific term, but you see this in societies, economies, when the world goes too far left wing, the pendulum has to swing all the way to right wing. And I mean, quite often you look at most democratic societies, it goes from Labour to Conservative, Democrats to Republicans, quite like that. The tide shifts. I think the same is the case in business. We went from out of IRL to online, and then it's kind of like there's a demand destruction whereby people want what they don't have, therefore they swing the other way. And my belief is that this is going to happen here, that everyone has gone really heavy into video calls. And if you look at it pre-2019, video calls weren't as common as before. I remember I would jump on calls with people on Zoom or Google Meets, and they wouldn't even know how to set up the tool, or they would miss the meeting because they said, I don't know how this works. And then they're forced, come COVID, to go into them. And then because we have so many video calls, that now people are swinging the other way and they're saying, you know what, this is boring, this is too easy, let's now move back into meeting a prospect in Manchester for lunch, because there's such a small minority that are doing it, that's what they're looking at. And I think that there's going to be this tug of war, so to speak, between these sorts of layers with things as time goes on. But hey, who knows? Maybe it is here to stay. We'll only see as time goes on. I'm curious, Holly, are you a reader at all?
I am a reader, but I read fiction, kind of classic airport reads, murder mysteries. So yeah, hopefully you're not about to ask me about, I don't know, some sales book or something, book on AI.
No. Books ready for Santorini. Go on. What did you last read then?
Frida McFadden, The Divorce.
Okay, do you want to give us a summary?
It is about a couple that have a divorce. The husband ends the relationship very abruptly. The now ex-wife gets obsessed with the new girlfriend and basically ends up nearly killing her.
Interesting. Well, there we go. That's a fiction book to add to the list there. So looking at that and moving away from books slightly, if you were to go back in time, it was your birthday last week, the week before, with that, looking at your 30s ahead, soon to come, what advice would you give to 20-year-old Holly?
Ooh, from a personal, a professional level, or both?
However you want to answer it.
What advice would I give to 20-year-old Holly? Probably the biggest piece of advice would be, don't be so reactive to things. I.e., sales is so up and down. It is such an emotional roller coaster. You can have your best month ever, and then the next month everything comes crashing down. And I think I used to, because I've always been very passionate about what I do. I've never been one of these people that just kind of it's 9 to 5 switches off. I used to take everything so personally. And if I'd have a bad month or run at work, I'd think it was the end of the world, and I'd suddenly think I needed to have a whole new career change, go and join another company, etc. So I would say, don't be so reactive. Don't let work get to you as much as it does, because at the end of the day, no matter how passionate you are, it is just a job and there is more to life. And probably just enjoy it a bit more and ride out the objections, the challenges. They're all part of growing. And also believe that it's always going to work out. I'm 29 now. I'm so happy in my personal life, in work. I absolutely love Fullenrich. I would never want to work anywhere else. And, had I not had maybe made the wrong career decisions previously, worked at companies which I now think, why did I take that job or that role? Maybe I wouldn't have been here. So, yeah.
So not to change the journey.
Yeah. That's
And what
nice.
about personally?
Personally, have fun. Enjoy yourself.
Good summary there. Holly, what's next for you and where can people find you?
So what's next for me is continue to build out the UK and Ireland go-to-market team at Fullenrich. So as I mentioned, we're hiring for our first kind of junior sales reps, which is really exciting. So keep building out that function for sure. Keep preaching about teams having good contact data, why that is literally the kind of baseline of having a successful go-to-market team. And if you want to learn more about Fullenrich, chat about contact data, or just connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place. I'm just Holly Allen on LinkedIn. So yeah, happy to connect on there.
Amazing. Holly, it was a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.